So can you guys see a slide with professional solutions? Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So first of all, thanks for participating today. We are going to go through a lot of data on wedges, how to be used, what numbers to look for, what has changed in the recent years. There will obviously be a lot of basic numbers and a few slides that we need to go through. When we've been through the slide deck, we will go to some live shots where I'll try to hit some shots and we can look at the different data and perhaps do it more of a workshop. And this would be a great time to ask all the questions that you've been thinking about, perhaps bring up some of the events that you've seen on when you've practiced or concerns you might have about wedge data and shots and all that stuff. So if there's no further questions to start with, let's just dig straight into it. If you guys can see here. I have a slight delay here. So first of all, I recognize some of the names here on the list, but there's also a few names that I don't know yet. So a quick introduction to who I am and why I'm speaking to you about wedges and why I'm representing Trackman at the moment. My name is Nicholas. I've basically worked in golf my entire life. I have a background in retail. I've been a PGA pro. I've worked on the European tour with Acushnet. I've been a regular club fitter for the everyday golfer. I even had Finland as a territory once where it was part of my Nordic territory. So I went up there for a few weeks just to do fittings for Titleist at the time. The pictures you see on screen here is basically from the workshop inside the tool truck. And it's the tour truck on the left. My educational background in golf is I'm a master club maker, which means that I can basically build a golf club from scratch. And on top of that, I have a master club fitter education as well. So in my opinion, I'm able to do a full educational purpose on wedges here. So from what I've learned from wedges, a lot of the information you'll get today is something I learned from the guy on the right there, the guy with the white sleeves. That is Mr. Bob Vokey. He was basically, he and his team was the one who taught me about how to think about wedges, how to use wedges, how to utilize ground and grinds and all that stuff. So if you have any questions in regards to the design of golf clubs or design of especially wedges, feel free to pop them later after we've been through the numbers that we look for. Here's a few of the wedges that we actually done. If you can see the wedge on the left here, you'll see that the bounce is slightly worn off on the backside here, just to give some heel relief. After my time with Acushnet, I was called up by Trackman, and they wanted to know if I was interested in taking over the Nordic markets. It was quite a few years ago, and it's been a different market ever since in regards of where Trackman really took off. So when I started, I was 50% in sales and 50% in development of new features and thinking about the directions the Trackman want to go. That quickly moved into complete sales, and now we are big enough a team, and I have a few sales reps employed in different countries. We are, by the way, looking for another one for Finland. We can discuss that later if anybody's want to. But we are at the moment adding more people, which gives me more time to go back into the development side of things that I'm very, very interested in, and that is Trackman performance potting. It will be more wedge data driven. It would be perhaps going into more of shots gain statistics and all that stuff. So that's basically who I am and why I'm here. Going into the products that we're going to need today is obviously the Trackman. We are using Trackman 4 because we need dual radar to actually detect wedge data. So it's a primarily Trackman 4 related subjects today. Currently, we have 90% of the world's top 100 golfers, and they've all purchased Trackman. When you look at social media and the internet in general, you will see a lot of our colleagues or competitors, depending on angle, that post a lot of pictures with players using quads and using flag scopes and using different kind of materials. But what we can say is that we know that all of these people are using their Trackmans for practice, and we know that we have the data from them, so we can actually still see what the use case is. The disadvantage that we have is that we're not really good at telling the story in regards to marketing, but be sure that you know that Trackman is still by far the most used product on tour. We had a case last week where we actually had all players on the range at the same time using Trackman. So that is the basic story about what we're going to use. I've taken this slide with me here because that is actually the full setup of a Trackman here. So you have the Trackman 4 that you can bring to the short game area, you can bring it to the range, you can bring it to the putting green, you can bring it wherever you want. And then you can actually open our new Trackman TM Pro Golf app. And in that app, you will have all the information that we are going to go through today, plus some other features. If you're using it indoors or if you're using it in your studio, you can obviously use a PC or laptop that you see on the right here. And you can always connect your telephone via the Trackman camera app. So it doesn't really matter where you collect the data, and we're going to go through the difference in data of grass and difference of mats, so we have something to compare. The reason why I'm mentioning this TM Golf Pro app is because it's our newest app. It's the one that we will develop on in the future. There is a lot of features added to this app that comes from requests from the market. So this is the app that will continuously be more and more suited for you guys as teaching instructors. So if you haven't downloaded that one to your iOS device yet, I would suggest that you do it and then make a switch away from what's called the TM Golf Classic, the one app that you've been using for probably 10 years, and then starting using this Trackman Golf Pro. There's some new features in there, and one of them is a request that comes from the market in general. It comes from the players, it comes from teaching coaches, it comes from amateur players who bought the Trackman. They want to know what numbers should be like. And this feature has been added in quite a clever way, because you can either decide to use Tracy. Tracy is the artificial intelligence that we have running in the background that will interpret the numbers. We can talk about her later, but we haven't done the Wedge program yet, so she's not that, what do you call it, important today. Looking at the screen that you have in front of you here is our Trackman app. And the first thing you can see is that we are able to show normalized and actual ball flight data at the same time. So the carry length of this is 322 yards, and the actual flight from the range ball here was 316 yards. So that is very useful in teaching, and it's very useful, especially if you guys are working with elite players and practicing for a different environment. Let's say you're playing high in the hills, or you're playing sea level or whatever. It will definitely help you guys out. On the left side here, you'll see there's a green number and a red number. These numbers are indicated by what you call corridors. So you guys as a coach can set a target for your player. Let's say a tag angle should be between -2 and -6. Then the player will get instant feedback if he's able to do so with a green or a red indication on the numbers. I hope that one makes sense. That is a heavily requested feature from the market that we've implemented, and we will continue to work on it. So that was some of the features that we're going to use today, and some of the actions that we're looking at into the future here. I am going to use TPS because I am inside a golf simulator today. I'm not on a short game area, so we are not using the corridors here, but we will use normalized, and we will use the different kind of numbers. Is everybody with me so far? I guess so.
Yeah. Any questions regarding the app or Everything good there? Like I said in the beginning, there's some people that popped in after the beginning. So if any questions, please write them in the chat and we'll go through them when the time is proper. So, okay, let's go.
Perfect. So now I'm going to go into how a radar actually works and the reason why we are the market leader in ball tracking and club tracking. There's a lot of rumors going around that Trackman and radar technology is not the way the future will work inside golf. We don't completely agree on that term, and I'm going to show you exactly how it works here. So when looking at a Trackman 4, if you look at the orange square there, you will see that behind that plastic cover, we will have transmitters and receivers. And we have two radar systems installed in a Trackman 4, which is why it's called dual radar. Those two radar systems send out signals at a different rate, which means that we have a high-speed radar and we have a low-frequency radar. The low-frequency radar is used for ball tracking and all the way down to the end of the range. The high-speed tracking is primarily for golf club and impact, exactly what happens when you hit the golf ball. We're going to go through some other stuff with golf balls and high-speed videos and all that later. But what you see in the blue square here is what's called a spectrogram. A spectrogram is the information that is sent from the Trackman 4 to the computer, and from there we need to put on some numbers for you guys. Obviously, just showing these blue squares doesn't make much sense in regards to a golf coach. So I'm going to go through it. Yeah, what do you call it? On the surface. I'm not going to deep dive into it. But what you see here, the white line here is the start. The upward going arrow here is the indication of speed, and the right going arrow here is the indication of time. So what happens here is that the ball is lying still where the in the bottom left corner. It accelerates incredibly without moving forward, and then it starts to move forward. The line that you see here is the ball traveling over the driving range. And you see that it loses relatively high speeds in the beginning, and then it's starting to even out as long as it goes out there. And the reason why it levels out is the lift and drag combination that you might have been through on your PGA school. But the way that a golf ball works is that it's affected by materials in the air that will induce drag, and the drag on a golf ball is higher the higher the speed a golf ball is traveling. So this is basically just the golf ball moving through the air. So here we have length of a shot, we have the speed of the golf ball, ball speed, and we also would have the indication of direction in regards to if it's going right, left, or whatever it does, because the signal is changing. So the signal from the golf ball to the receiver is changing a bit. I know this can be relatively far out, but it's just nice to have some basic knowledge on how it works. Then we go into how do we measure spin, which is an important thing for us, especially today where we are playing around with wedges. So we basically have the time here. We have the frequency or speed, and then we have the time indication as well. If we zoom in on that little area here, where the arrow is, in the top left corner on the blue square, then we can start to see spin indications, which means that we can start to see the difference between the bottom of the ball and the top of the ball moving. When we can see a difference in speed there, that will be one rotation of the golf ball. And we have the measurement in time, so we can actually from this just count them and do, and this is the amount of spin numbers that we have. If we zoom in, there will be even more of these. So this is the way that we measure spin, top and bottom, and we measure it over time and not in an instant second as some of our colleagues do, which is relatively important because there will be some difference regarding to where you hit on the golf ball. When we look at spin decay on shots, there is some people claiming that the ball will lose spin more than speed on when it travels from A to B. This is not right. It's basically a linear decay of spin numbers on a shot. I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but it's an important thing to keep in the back of your head. So this was the ball flight, how we measured. Let's go to the golf club. We are still using radar to track the golf ball and the golf club in the parameters where it's best suited. So there are some numbers that are better suited with camera, and we use our camera, and there's some numbers that are better suited with radar, and we use radar for those. The best combination is having both, actually. So going through the first blue square here, you see that we have Trackman golf club, but with the radar we can actually track the sphere of the golf club. So we will basically know where is the golf club. We can track toe, heel, top, crown, and the bottom. And when the golf club is moving through the air, the spectrogram is this blue on the left side here. I'm gonna go through it because it's relatively exciting stuff. So what we see here, you see the red where it says club pre-shot. This is actually the golf club moving towards the golf ball. Then we have a very steep drop in speed. That is the exact point where the golf club hits the golf ball. And then we have an energy transfer, you can see, which is a green indication up to the arrow. And this is where the ball actually leaves the club head. So the very straight line here is the ball moving away from the golf club. Then we have a drop in club head speed. Obviously, when an object hits another object, it will drop in speed, and this one does as well. And then we have the club head moving away from the impact location, basically. So this drop in speed and this power indication up here, those are the two indicators on how much energy is actually transferred to the golf ball. And that would be equivalent to smash factor. We also have the movement of the shaft down here. So that is the shaft moving and the dynamic line. We obviously have the club speed going in here. We have the ball speed moving away, and we will have the club post shot. If we do an average indication of this line and the club pre line, club post and club pre, we will have swing direction. We will have club path and all that stuff. Looking at the picture down there, you'll see that is a club head behind the golf ball, which means that we can very clearly from the position of the Trackman indicate where is the golf ball. And then the golf club will move away from the golf ball, and we will still have an indication. When we hit the golf ball, we use that still frame, and then we can indicate with impact location exactly where on the face is the golf ball being hit. That is important as well, because that will give us impact location on pretty much every shot that you have. So that was a very quick run through on how radars work and how Trackman work. It's very important to have the basic knowledge, because some people will ask you in the golf club, how does this one work? And you can basically just tell them it's radar system, it's dual radar, it's the most accurate tracking device in the world. And we pretty much use it for tracking everything. And then we use the camera for giving the acknowledgement of the radar that's being tracked with of the data being tracked with radar. Did that one make sense, or was that too much of a deep dive in the morning? Can you guys just put a message in the chat? Do you guys need a small breather after this one, or should we just push on to some golfing data instead?
Yeah, just ask any questions if so.
Hey, guys, we're going to do this as more of a workshop based, because if you guys are about to listen to me speak for 4 hours, it's going to be relatively boring. So whatever input you have, just give a message in the chat and I will call you out, or just interrupt me and ask the questions that you like to. We need to get some conversations going and some cases going, and just interact with each other. That's the best way of learning.
Yeah, and for everyone as well, if you need to ask the questions in Finnish, if you don't know how to ask in English, just write it in Finnish and we'll translate. So no problem there as well. So, well, there's one question in the chat.
Is that from Kari?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some difference in regards to spin numbers, launch angles, and all that stuff, and we're gonna go through that later, because it's a matter of friction and the way that the golf ball interacts with the club face. So that is one of the subjects that we're gonna go through later, definitely. It obviously makes sense that every time you're on grass, there will be some kind of both resistance, and there will also be some debris between the ball and the club face, and that will influence numbers as well. Primarily spin friction, but that's something that we're going to go through. If everybody's happy with that, we can move into perhaps move into something here. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I think we can move forward. So.
Can you guys still see the screen here? It says impact. I'm running on multiple screens here, so it might.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to go through here is some short game data, how it works, and stuff. But there is some not issues, but there is some parameters that I want to start with going through. These parameters are the ones that I most frequently is asked about when I go to golf clubs. It's not necessarily only on short game and wedges, but it's the numbers that we are mostly asked about. So if you know about it, it's fine. But if you don't feel completely secure in these numbers, ask all the questions that you want. I'll try to answer whatever I can. And if I can't answer it, I can definitely get somebody at headquarters to give me an answer, and I will get back to you on mail at a later point. So this is not what. So club path is something that we need to go through, especially in correlation to swing direction. Swing direction is also one I get a lot of questions about. Obviously, how does attack angle influence this, and what is swing plane? So I've drawn up some basic drawings here, and yeah, excuse me if it's not not pretty, but it's for example purposes. So club path and attack angle. In this case, I've just taken with a driver. The swing, not the optimal, but the average swing plane for regular golfers is 45 degrees with a driver. Meaning that when you go from the ground, you go up in a 45 degrees angle, and there you will have the travel of the club head. So yeah, that is a pretty basic number, the swing plane. But the swing plane influence the comparison between swing direction and club path. So in this case, we have an attack angle of 0 degrees. That means that the swing direction and club path will remain the same on the shots. So as long as attack angle is 0, swing direction doesn't really influence club path. That is an important notice to have, because that doesn't matter what the swing plane would be here on that one. So at attack angle 0, it makes absolutely no difference. So if we continue to hit a driver here at 45 degrees swing plane, but now we have one of those guys who hit down on the ball with a driver, that means that the golf club head will be traveling inside out. If you look at the yellow half circle on the left, so getting back in that half circle will actually move the club path to the right. With a driver, it's a one-to-one comparison. So moving an attack angle -1 will create a club path of +1. So that is something also to consider when doing educational stuff. So what will happen if we move on the other side of the half circle here? Moving to a positive attack angle on the ball, hitting up on the golf club, on the golf ball here. We still continue to have a swing direction of 0. which means that the attack angle of 5 degrees upwards going will create a club path of 5 degrees inwards, or to the left in this case, because it's right-handed golfer. So a one-to-one correlation between attack angle and club path with a 0 swing direction at 45 degrees swing plane. If we move the swing plane, can you guys imagine what would give you a steeper swing plane in what would you do for an example if you want to have a steeper swing plane numbers? Could that be changing to a shorter iron, for instance? Or would it be changing the way the player moves and shoots, behaves? So what I've done here for educational purposes is just change to a 6 iron. 6 iron normally would be, in my opinion, around these 62, 63 degrees. That's definitely what I had on my data points here when I took all the swing planes compared to all the players. I was at 63. With a 6 iron at a 63, the comparison between club path, swing direction, and obviously club path is still the same. I think somebody needed to be admitted. So going back to the 0 attack angle, it's still the same correlation between club path and attack angle. It's nothing has changed there. But when we go to move back here to a negative attack angle on it, you'll see that the club path on the driver with a 45 degree swing plane, it changed from -5 to +5 in club path. But now an attack angle of -5 will only give you 2.5 degrees positive club path. And that is due to the swing plane changing. And this is also important. So in this case, if I wanted to have 0 club path, but maintaining a 5 degrees negative attack angle, I would have to change my swing direction to the left. Right? Then the swing direction by 2.5 degrees to the left would give me a 0 club path. I hope that one made sense. People are often asking me, what should we use the swing direction for? And I'm just saying we need to do it for calibrations in comparison to the ball flight that you want and to the club path numbers. So you can actually alterate the swing direction to get the desired club path if you have settled on an attack angle. So it's kind of like a code that you need to decide on what is the correct number for this player, and then you can alterate the 2 others to get the club moving in the direction that you want. Going for 5 degrees positive attack angle on 6 iron, that is most likely not going to happen, but it's good for the example here. So with a 0 swing direction, 5 degrees up into the ball, it will make a club path -2.5. If I want to have the club path at 0, I would have to move the swing direction to the right to match up that club path to the target line. So that was some of the numbers that we are often asked about. How does this one compare to each other? A lot of people are only working on club path, and that is the number, and they just don't get the why does the club path change when I change my attack angle to the ball. So that is a very important number to have in mind, the swing direction number. You will also, when you go take these numbers to the general players, you will see that most amateur golfers will have a negative swing direction on their drivers and fairway woods and longer irons, and then they will start to have a positive swing direction on their on the shorter irons. So when we go back to what we would like to do, for instance, here on a 6 iron, we would like to have a 5 degrees negative attack angle on ball, and we would like to have a square club path, which means that we would need to move the swing direction to the left. And what you will see is that people would most likely have a positive swing direction, and that's why they have difficulties getting the club path to around 0. So that is also a way that you can look at the numbers. The good players in the world are positive on swing direction, obviously through the longer clubs, with the positive attack angles, and then obviously they are negative on the shorter clubs. Because there's a correlation also that it's easier to have a clean impact with a slightly negative swing direction to the ball. So that was some of the movement of the golf club. I hope you got that one. I'm not sure if Henrique has sent you all the slides yet, or if you will receive them afterwards, but it's good just to go back, or you should go into our new Trackman University, which has been completely updated with new questions, new quizzes, and all that stuff, and go through that one. That is there's a lot of good information there. So now we can start to focus on wedges itself. I have a few wedges in front of me here, and I will obviously be able to hit some shots when we go through it. But we're going to go through some statements as well that people are just embedded in golfers' mind, that this is the way it works and this is the way it is. And it's not always the case. And you guys are the only ambassadors that we have to actually tell the right story about how it works. So going to friction and spin rate, having a look at this guy hitting a golf shot, you can see that it's clean contact is needed to have a good spin friction number on the ball, or good friction on the ball. So a good contact will make the influence of the ground less important in the shot. And that is also why it's easier to maintain a good contact with the golf ball off the golf mat than it is off the grass, because there will actually be no materials, debris, water, or something between the ball and the club, obviously. I have some high-speed videos here. I hope the left one is moving. This is a completely clean golf ball with a clean club face, and you can see that the ball is rotating relatively quick on the club face. There's no roll or anything up the club face. When you look at the one to the right, that is with water sprayed on the club face, you'll see that the ball will start sliding, and it will not generate as much of a rotation around the center of the golf ball as you would expect on a shot. So these two numbers here is indications of what's called spin friction, how much friction is produced in the golf ball. But this is also important to notice when you guys are doing your educational or practice side of things, because you probably knew this, but you didn't know exactly. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what you know and don't know, but it's something that people have in the back of their mind, but they don't know how much of an influence it normally does. So when you guys are having your first lesson in the day, and you guys go to the short game area and start practicing, let's say 50-meter wedge shots, and there will be some water laying on the grass, and the balls will most likely be in a bucket and then tipped over because they will be wet afterward. You will get this low friction kind of shots, and the numbers that you will be looking for in the low friction scenario is not the same as the ones that you will be looking for in the high friction scenario. So it's also important to learn the players that if you go play a golf round in the morning and there will still be this dew on the fairways, when you hit shot there, you should not expect high friction, low launch angles and spin rates of your shots. What I've learned in my years doing wedges, fittings, and all that stuff is that people don't think about these issues. I've had European Tour players where we started the morning rounds on Tuesdays, going out, and he tried to hit basically low spinners off the fairway with dew on the ball and basically water on the club face, and they did not have a complete understanding on how the dynamics work, which came to quite a surprise to me. There's a lot of equipment manufacturers, ball manufacturers, and people in general who are trying to fix this issue. I know that Mizuno has some water repellent materials on top of their wedges. The Ping series of wedges do as well. But if the people using these wedges don't know the basics of how much spin you'll lose and all that stuff, it wouldn't really matter which kind of wedge you gave them, because it's more of a mental game than it is actually able to produce more spin, because you will always lose friction no matter how good the equipment you use. You will always lose space friction. So going in to the friction talk and what numbers to actually look like and where you would actually get the optimal numbers. And this is also going back to what Carrie asked about, with the difference between mats and grass. What we're looking at here is what we call spin mountain. Spin mountain is an indication on where you can actually produce the most spin and how you would actually do it. On the left side, you will have our spin numbers. So what I've put in here is obviously approximately numbers. So you will see a 10,000 as our maximum spin number. I know that guys like Rory and the hard hitters are actually able to produce more spin than this, and they do that by increasing the club speed actually, and just hitting the ball in a different way than we used to. We just changed our spin rate model 2 years back, because Rory came back to us and said, I'm sorry, I don't trust the numbers anymore because it doesn't suit whatever works. And we measured and measured and measured, and we could actually see that there's been a slight movement in the ball flight laws since we came out with this in the beginning of the launch monitor world. So it's constantly changing, because the people out there are able to do new stuff that the rest of the world are not able to. But the guys that you will see on your driving ranges and your short game areas will fit this model. I'm relatively sure. So the numbers you see in the bottom with the 45. Sorry. So what you see in the bottom here with the 45 degrees is the 45 degrees is our spin loft. And the spin loft is the number between attack angle and the dynamic loft of the club head. So for a wedge shot, for you guys to produce the maximum spin in normal conditions, which means no debris between the ball, no water or anything, in the perfect optimal conditions off a mat, there, Carrie, as you asked about, in the hitting off a mat, you would be looking for a spin loft number equivalent to 45. We might even say up to 48, depending on what golf balls you use, but in the area there between 45 to 48, that is the optimal facilitator for spin that you can actually create at all, at pretty much the full spectrum of the club speed. So that is with the wedge shot. You can also, if we add some more friction numbers here, just give me a second. There we have some different numbers as well. When using a golf club that doesn't produce the same amount of friction as a wedge does, yeah, I would say, let's say a 6-iron, for instance. If you put in a 6-iron into the scale, you would see that it will pop up on the lower friction. So it will be in this area here. That is the optimal spin loft number for a 6-iron. All of these numbers are calculated into the optimizer. So if you're using the optimizer that I'm going to show you later, we have already put this one in, but it's always good to have some background knowledge on how it works. And obviously, if you're shooting drivers, you will have to go to the very low spin friction, because the movement of the golf ball on the club head is basically nothing on a driver. So it will be in this area here. The lower spin loft you can have on a driver, the more effective your energy transfer to the golf ball is. So if you have very people competing in long drive competitions and all that stuff, and they would really like to hit the golf ball as far as possible, they would reduce their spin loft, hit the ball as far as they do, but the slightest mistake in impact location or club movement will increase the amount of curvature on the golf ball, and the ball can be right or left. So going back to the wedges here, looking for numbers from in the area around the 45 to 48. Obviously, if we go to want to produce the maximum amount of spin, when we have debris on the ground, or if we have grass cuts or whatever we have. That means that we're moving into the lower friction, and then it will be up to you guys to decide how much of an interference is there here between grass, water, whatever there's, and what should the optimal spin number be for this exact drill or practice that we're doing at this exact point in time. Does that make sense? Good stuff. There we can put in the 6-iron there. So let's go into what generates spin and how it works on different golf clubs. We all know that spin loft is the main influencer on creating spin. The club head speed. The faster the club head moves, the more spin it can generate. The friction, as we just saw on the high-speed videos there, and obviously the impact location on certain golf clubs is also important in regards to how the golf club is actually built. I have a list, and it looks like this. So the higher lofted golf clubs that you use, the more important is the contact with the golf ball into getting the amount of spin. So looking into spin loft, as I said, was the most influential factor in spin. You can see that I've put in 3 dots for both driver, iron, and 2 dots for wedges. Club speed is obviously important for all of it. And friction, the spin friction, the debris, the water, and all that stuff is also important in regards to how it works and in regards to where it flies and all that stuff. And then impact location is only actually important. And obviously, if you hit outside the grooves, it's going to have some kind of importance on the wedge shot. But as long as you're inside the grooves on a wedge, it will increase spin, and the spin will basically be what it should be in regards to club data. On driver, you will reduce spin by hitting, basically on the top end of the driver, towards the toe or towards the heel, will all influence the spin numbers. So guys, we have 15 minutes until we go on the first break here. I would like to ask you guys some questions, and please be open about it. How much of these things that we have spoken about here are present in your education? How much do you think about these issues on day-to-day business? Remember, there's no wrong answers. It's just important to know if it's relevant for you guys or if it's basic knowledge and completely irrelevant, and we are absolutely wasting our time here.
I have one question, Nicholas, about the impact location that you're showing here, because I think it's a common belief that if you hit the lower part of the wedges, or like the lower grooves, that you create more spin, kind of like vertical gear effect, but that's not true.
It can be, but the influence is so little. What we're going to go through in some later slides here is, if you want to optimize the friction on the club face, you want to address just below 1 in smash factor, which is the energy transfer. And if you want to do that in the lower part, on the top toe part of the golf club, that is completely up to your skill set. Okay. But the result will be basically the same. It's just harder to get a lower smash factor in the bottom of the club, because that is primarily where the weight is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you look at the new equipment manufacturers, they all have this new high toe model where it has grooves all the way to the top of the golf club, and these are made basically also to do Phil Mickelson shots where you lay the face down and hit it on the toe of the golf club. But it's also made because a lot of the better players in the world, they have a tendency to hit their wedges slightly on the toe, just outside of the sweet spot. And the reason for that is because that will produce a lesser smash factor, which will make the golf ball stick on the club face for longer, increasing the friction numbers. And increasing friction numbers will actually add to the spin. And when you have a lower smash factor, you're actually able to produce a higher club speed. So that would also add to the spin. And obviously the spin loft will stick the same as long as you don't open the club face. So that is the primarily area to hit for a better player. I would not tell that story to your average golfer. It could be a nightmare seeing a handicap 34 player trying to hit every wedge in the toe. That will not benefit them in the game, but all the elite players that you have, the best players in the world, they will be able to actually manage this part of the game. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely, and even more. So thanks for that.
That's perfect. Anybody else who wants something? I know these open forums is always scary or terrifying, but just get whatever numbers we can. Perhaps even if we have some bigger topics, I can put them in the back end of the slide deck here, and we can discuss them after we've hit some shots. Nothing really.
Nothing. Only Kari commented that he works with these numbers every week. So, but no other comments so far. So I think if the Finns are quiet, everything is good.
That is absolutely a perfect way. So what I believe we should do, guys, is probably take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, stretch our legs because there's a lot of information coming, and just the next part that we're going to go through is pretty much short game. I'm going to give you some optimal numbers, which is obviously our Trackman based optimal numbers. You may not agree with us, but that is something that you can go through. And then we're going to go through a lot of basic numbers that will take a good cup of coffee to go through. It might not be the most exciting stuff, but you will definitely have some base knowledge afterwards and know what to look for when doing wedge educations and all that stuff. So let's say we meet back here 5 minutes past.
Sorry, Nicholas, one question popped up in the chat. And then, can you see it?
Yeah, the ball settings on Trackman affect the calculated spin. If you are on wedge shots and you're using driving range balls, the ball setting that you choose will influence the normalized numbers quite a bit on the spin numbers. We have that I haven't put in here, but we actually have a pretty good procedure on how to actually decide which golf ball you're going to choose in your settings. And that is by hitting 4 or 5 Pro V1s, you will have a pretty good indication on where you should be lying, and then trying to hit the different kind of ball settings. So after that, hitting 3 on limited distance soft, limited distance hard, a limited distance floater, or whatever it is. And then you go afterwards back and compare the numbers, and you will see a pretty solid difference between the different kind of settings, and you choose that one that is the closest. You should be able to get it within 400 to 500 RPMs in comparison to the Pro V1. So that is that's a good tool to use, obviously, and it's needed if you are educating on driving ranges. We always recommend using the ball that the player is actually going to use. I know it's not always doable, but if you are in the short game area, you can use the ball that the players are going to use. That's also a good way of selling more golf balls, because the golf ball is the most important part of a wedge shot. I'm going to, when we're going live here, I have some different kind of golf balls set up here in front of me, and we're going to test some different golf balls, see what is the difference, how it's going to look like. But I'm going to use these 15 minutes on finding the model on how choosing the correct range ball, and then we can put it into the slide deck that we sent to you guys. Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, I think so. He's happy.
Perfect. I'll go find it as well. But let's say we see back here at 5 minutes past. What will that be?
10:05 finish time.
Yeah, 5 minutes past finish time.
Yeah. So Eli 10:05, 10:05 will continue, so short break and get back then.
Perfect.
Great.
See you in a bit.
Yep.
Yeah. Are we ready to?
Yeah, I think it's 10:05, so let's go and continue. So.
All right. Going back to some of the stuff that we already discussed. Now we're going to look at how to actually implement it into the short game data. We have a lot of people asking us, why don't you put out the optimal numbers, the perfect numbers for short game, and why don't you just give us basically a guide on how to play short game? The reason why we don't want to go into that kind of a template thinking in short game is because every player is very dependent on his short game, and it will be more of his game DNA that will tell the teacher on how do we want to proceed with this guy. Is his main objective to go hit low spinners to all greens, or will he benefit more from steeper landing angles and all that stuff? So there is no template solution that you can put onto every player. That being said, I am going to show you some numbers that we think is the most beneficial in different scenarios, and we also, I am going to show you some of the thought out scenarios where people are actually thinking that they want to shoot the shot. So going into this short game thinking, and the real key to be a better short game player is to get your distance control straight. So knowing your exact distance with different shots. Some people tend to manipulate their ball speed by having a certain amount of length on their backswing, the clock method. So if you swing to this point and move it in the same motion or same tempo, you will reach top speed that will influence the ball flight and so on. And some people just have the shots in the fingertips, and those guys are acting more of a feeling than they're actually moving on different data parameters. For the field kind of players, they will still have to hit the same top speed and all that stuff, but they will feel it more in their hands instead of having a certain amount of way of doing it. And that is important when you guys are teaching, that get a sense of what is this guy is actually looking for, and then you can actually go for it. So going into what's optimal numbers. So distance control. If we set up a scenario here where you need to be within 8 feet from the target, and you would like to have a landing angle of approximately 40 degrees, which means that it will be a relatively low flying spinning wedge shot. Obviously, when you get to 100 meters, most people will tend to hit full shots, which will increase the landing angle to somewhere between 45 to 50 degrees. You don't want to go over 50 unless you're a tour player, and you don't want to go less than 45 because that will make you lose carry length. But let's say it's a pitch shot. The numbers we put in here is 40, 60, 80, and 100 meters. Basic wedge gain distances. So looking at what numbers you would like to look for in this case, it will be a launch angle approximately 32.5. That will produce approximately 6,000 RPMs of spin. The ball speed will be somewhere within 48 miles per hour radius, and that will give you a plus minus 1.5 corridor to be in and still hit within that target range. So these are numbers that you can actually look at and try to utilize when you're looking at players. How can we optimize this guy to be better at doing this stuff? I always recommend that doing short game, that having the player hit a few shots and then looking at average numbers and the standard deviation numbers, then you can actually pretty much pinpoint exactly what kind of the wedge shot do you need to work it on. I hope all of you guys are aware of how to toggle on the average numbers and the standard deviation numbers in the bottom side on both the app and in TPS. Otherwise, I'm going to show you later how that is done. Going to 60, you see that there will be an increase in 2,000 RPMs, a slightly flatter launch angle, sorry. And going upwards, the amount of spin is increasing because the club speed needed is higher, which means that the miles per hour on the ball traveling is also higher. So these are baseline numbers that you can look for. You can use if you like to, but these are for pitch shots for distance control. It's always a good idea to have players know their basic numbers. So when you're teaching with Trackman and you're hitting wedge shots and you're telling them about it, it can be terrifying to people if they have 15 parameters that they need to be in with for hitting a wedge shot. That will tend to scare them more than help them in short game, because it's also very field oriented. But if you give them some baseline numbers, so basically see if your launch angle can be within this, because they will have to learn to look at that exact launch angle. And then when they take it to the golf course, they will know what happened and therefore be able to fix the issue in mid-game when they are out playing. But you will get this slide and you can use it if you want to. It's numbers that I pulled out of the system. We have my colleagues that are listening in might be able to help me here, but I think we have 2 billion golf shots in the system now. So we have a lot of information to take from, but this is some of the numbers that I pulled out. Now there will be a lot of these slides. It might look relatively boring to look at, but there is some good information to pull from these. So going down in the bottom in the first one, I'll see if I can get my pointer to work here. Just a second. Laser pointer. So if you look at the numbers here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000, that is the spin rate at launch. And you saw that it was a pretty linear decay in spin. This up here is the correlation between the landing angle and the spin rate. The indications here, the green indication is a bounce and stop, you know, the basic wedge shot in. The red one is the indication of a miss, which is the rollout where the ball lands on the green and simply just rolls out, no spin control whatsoever. And the blue ones are the zip back, the one that all amateur golfers are dreaming about hitting. Hitting a zip back shot from 40 meters with a pitch from a good lie indicates that you need to absolutely have a maximum amount of friction on the golf ball. But let's see what spin rates are needed to do these things and what landing angles are correlating to them. The top one here is from a good lie. That could be from mats, hitting from mats, or it could be from a perfect A1 lie on the fairway. Down here we have the same shot, but from a bad line, which indicates that you might be in the semi-rough or in the rough. I haven't done any specific divided rough and semi-rough and all that stuff into it. Going back to speaking of my background with the Krishnet, I was taught in wedges to look at wedges in a pretty simple setup. You do one wedge that you match up to the existing set of clubs, which we, for ease of use, can call a gap wedge. Then you have 2 other wedges. Back in the days, you would have a lob wedge and a sand wedge. That all-time way of looking at it is slightly going away these times that we are in, and then looking at it as an A1 wedge, which you will hit from the A1 position, meaning that the best lie possible, and you will use that for all shots, no matter the distance on wedge shots. You will use that particular wedge for all the shots. Let's say that is a 56 degree, because in the 56 degrees that you have been fitted for you, that your teacher has taught you how to use, you know that you will hit the optimal spin loft on every single shot. It doesn't matter if it's 40, 60, 80 meters pitch shot. You know that the movement of your body and the club head will produce 45 degrees spin loft, increasing your opportunity to control your spin on the green, and thereby controlling the obviously the length of the shot and also the way that you hit the golf ball. And that was the A1 wedge. Then he told us to call it an F wedge, the one that you use when you're not in A1 position, meaning that when you're in the bunker, when you are in rough, when you are in pine straw, whatever you can get out of. So when you're not in a scoring position, you need an F wedge. And the F wedge is because Mr. Wauke, he called it a fucked up wedge. So that's the one that you use every time you fucked up. And I'm not supposed to say that, but that is basically what he calls it. The F wedge is a wedge where you rely more on landing angle than you do on the actual spin rate of the golf club. And the landing angle is controllable by launch angle and ball speed, obviously. Because the ball flight is less than it would be on on a longer iron, the effect of the spin rate is not as significant as it would be on a 7-iron, for instance. So getting the optimal landing angle on bad lies, so with the F wedge, and it can actually, in some cases, I've definitely done it on tour, but on tour, you'll have two almost identical wedges, perhaps only with 2 degrees difference, but with different soles and grinds. And those two wedges can actually do it for what's called a lob wedge and a sand wedge. So let's look at the good lie here. That will be the A1 wedge. What you want to hit is actually the green ones here. So if you can get a landing angle on approximately just below the 40 or just over 40, but 40 degrees landing angle with around 7,000 spin, the ball will land on the green, bounce one, and then stop. And that is the shot that most people are looking for. If we go into the sit back shot, you would need almost 1,000 RPMs more in spin rate to produce that, and you would need a slightly higher landing angle. So what you can see here from the mid and the high ball flight and the low and the mid ball flight, that is actually not possible to hit a 40-meter pitch shot with a low ball flight, a low landing angle that will actually sit back. You will need to go to mid or high ball flight. The rollout is what we normally see for people, amateur golfers, hitting pitch shot in from, you can go to, let's say, handicap 12 plus players. I know it's always difficult to divide people into handicaps, but it will give you an idea of the type of player that I'm talking about here. They will hit a shot that will have a steep landing angle, but no spin rate. So the ball will roll out on the green, which makes them increasingly difficult for average golfers to actually hit near pin placements that are closer to the front of the green. That is just a fact. If your greenkeepers at your golf clubs want to do difficult flag positions, they just need to put them in the front of the green, because that is where people can't really stop the ball. On wedge shots, they might be able to on longer irons. So this is a good indication of how it looks like from good lie. When we move to the rough and we add debris, water, whatever we add between the ball and the club head, so it reduces the friction on the golf ball, you see that it changes a lot. It's not possible anymore to have the blue sit back shot, no matter the ball flight, whatever you do. You can't do it from a rough situation. And you will see that the spin numbers here, you remember the spin mountain, or should we go back to it? But we had the low friction shots, which means that the spin numbers will decrease and the landing angle will increase when you hit from there. And that is why you would go for a F wedge, you know, with a slightly more lofted club to increase the launch angle, but also increase the landing angle. And obviously you can hit whatever you want, low, mid, high ball flight here, it will be equal into almost the same spin rate. So does these two pictures make sense? Even though it looks relatively boring, you will get it and you can deep dive into it. I'm happy to add further information later if anybody needs it. Good stuff. So we also have another factor to this short game. We have the green reaction. So how does the golf ball react when hitting the green surface there? Obviously, the spin rate will have an influence on how the ball reacts. If you have a higher spin rate, obviously the first bounce on the green will be with a bounce upwards that will be more of a vertical bounce. So to get the desired sit back function that people are always asking you guys about, I guess that's at least how it was when I was coaching, and that's what it is in Denmark. People come to the golf coach and say, I want to hit the shots that they do on television. I want to hit the sit back shot every single time I hit it into the green. And then you guys are standing with a handicap 25 player trying to teach them how to actually do this. So there's a magic formula. You can tell them that you need at least 8,000 RPMs of spin rate, and you would need to have a landing angle over 40 degrees. And then just tell them this is how you do it, get to it. And it demands such a clean contact with the golf ball on 40 yards that it's almost undoable for an average golfer. Going to the next numbers here, we will have a 40-meter shot. The landing angle, how it correlates to the launch angle. Obviously, as I said, in regards to ball flight, the spin number is not that important in smaller wedge shots. So the landing angle and the launch angle are pretty much correlated as well. So if we go here and look at these numbers, you can basically see that they are, if I do like that, that it's a pretty linear movement. So the numbers are relatively close to the blue line here. The bounce and stop here will have a landing angle that is relatively flat and launch low, which means that there's a high friction number on it. That's why it will most likely produce a higher spin number. And that one as well. Then we have the sit back here. It lands at a steeper angle, but it's still relatively low launch, which means that it will have a high spin number, and that one as well. And then we have the rollbacks here on the bottom. So looking at these numbers in regards to launch angle and landing angles means that you can actually have, I'm going to show here. If you look at the launch angle on these red ones, you might be able to recognize the number on it. So hitting these small 40-yard shots that comes out with a high launch angle, low friction, that is pretty correlating to what we would call a flyer with a regular iron. Obviously, the term of flyer hit from the semi-rough, where you get debris between the ball and the club face, and it will launch high and it won't spin, and it will just run out behind the green. So the basic idea with these red ones, which is the rollouts, is that they are basically mini flyers that you have chipped in. So you don't have the same connection to the golf ball. I hope that one makes sense as well. You see them up here. These are what I would address as mini flyers. They have a high launch angle, they have a relatively high landing angle, but there will be no spin because there will be no friction on the club face. Going to the term landing angle, that is important. Landing angle in the smaller shots that we are with here is obviously very much linked to launch angle. And here we have the more spin, you will still have a steeper landing angle, but you can measure it down to 20 meters, but it will still not have the same correlation as it does on the longer shots that you hit. So to produce a steeper landing angle, I wouldn't recommend that you check the player in and trying to gain him perhaps 1,000 more spin rate on shots, because the influence on his landing angle will not be the same as if you increase his launch angle by perhaps 2 degrees, something like that. It is still the same aerodynamics as we have on golf ball with lift, drag, spin, and all that stuff, but it's not as what do you call it, exaggerated in shorter shots. So how can we influence this launch angle that will influence the landing angle? Going into controlling the dynamic loft of the golf club, which means that which which dynamic loft is presented to the golf ball. So not what is the loft on the golf club, but what loft is presented to the golf ball. There might be shaft lean, closed club head, open club head, mishits on the club face, and all that stuff that will influence what is the dynamic loft. So the dynamic loft you get on your Trackman 4 is what loft were presented to the golf ball, and the dynamic loft is what's being calculated into the spin loft number. So looking at this one, we have the dynamic loft on the left side. So you can go here from pretty much from a pitching wedge with a slightly with the hand slightly forward and all the way up to a 60-degree wedge. And then we have the carry distance. Going back to what I spoke about having the F wedge, the A1 wedge, they could be pretty much similar in static loft on the golf clubs, is because it doesn't influence that much in the different kind of scenarios, right? So we have the loft here, and you can have, let's say, 50 degrees loft, and you can still pretty much see that they will be online. If I add this one, there will be a different trajectory to them, but the shot that you will hit will be able to do with every single one depending on the club speed. Does that make sense? So instead of teaching wedge shots on different static lofts on the golf clubs, I would teach different shots on the club speeds instead. So when going in and buying a set of wedges, and the retail guy will tell you that you need 4 degrees between every single wedge, because when you hit 4 shots, they will go 4 different distances. You don't use them for full shots, and you won't use them in the way that it's been told in there. So you won't almost never see tour players with a constant difference between their wedges in 4 degrees. Some of them will have 2 degrees, 3 degrees, some of them will have 8 degrees. So the span that you have on a full wedge could be up to 18 degrees. And you will still be able to maintain all the carry distances. So what you have here is the indication that club speed are a major factor in carry distance, but it's not linear. So you cannot say that increasing 2 miles an hour in club speed will gain you 2 yards, for instance. There's not such a simple way of doing it. So what we have here is club speed, and what we have here is carry. And if we expect it to be around 1 smash factor, so 1 in correlation to it, the number will drop from a lower club speed, and the efficiency that you have on the golf ball will also decrease the carry length. Does that make sense? If it was linear, it will be very much easier to play golf, and will be easier to control your carry length in regards to wedge play. You will get these slides, and you can always go through them. It's just indications for you. It's not a template for each player. It's just indications on where are we in regards to high, mid, and low ball flight numbers. So this is just more of an indication on the difference here between carry and club speed. It's almost something that you can count on, but it's not an exact science. Here we go, because it is actually dependent on your ball speed. So the amount of speed that the ball is leaving the club face with and the carry distance on wedge shots is actually a linear equation. So when what you can take from this is, when focusing on a player and you're doing a wedge education with a relatively good golfer, let's say a handicap 7 to 10 player, you would want him to practice his ball speeds in regards to his carry distance instead of his club speeds. Does that make sense? So when you are saying, for instance, I want you to practice 50-meter shots, and you want the exact ball flight that you want. Let's say you want a mid ball flight and you want to have a 15-meter shot, and a guy is practicing. Have a look at his ball speed, how that one increases and decreases. And if there is a big standard deviation number on that ball speed, that is something that I would go into and work on, because increasing the knowledge about ball speed will also increase his or hers, sorry, his or hers indication on how far do I actually hit my wedge shots. So that is a good way of doing it. Obviously, spin numbers and all that stuff comes into the equation when you have the A1 position and you're able to control your spin. So working on distances and working on ball speeds. A good story on that one with wedges is the story about DJ Dustin Johnson. All of you guys know him and know how he plays golf and all that stuff, but not all of you guys know exactly what the trip he made from being an average PGA Tour player to when he wanted to be the best player in the world. And it's obviously a good sales track to say it, but he obviously bought a Trackman. He was told by his coach that he would never get it to the top of the world if he did not improve his wedge game. So what he did is that he bought a Trackman 4. He went in, he said, I don't want to know anything about all the numbers. I don't give a flying. And then they set up the app in front of him and then basically told him to learn how to control your ball speed. So what he has two numbers on his Trackman when he uses it. It's ball speed and it's carry distance. All of the rest of the numbers that are in the Trackman, that is up to his coaches. It's nothing that he will ever dig into. He obviously asks some questions and all that stuff, but he's not going to focus on that one when he practices. So if you guys have seen some of the pictures that we have posted online with DJ practicing at Augusta, you will see that he'll have his iPad in front of him, and you will see there's only two numbers on the screen. That's carry length and ball speed. And that is a way that he practices every week. He knows that when my ball speed is approximately 50 miles an hour, I should be carrying the ball 45 yards. And that is the practice for him. When my ball speed should be 40 miles an hour, I should be carrying the ball around 30 yards. And that is something that's very easy for him to practice. It gives him immediate feedback. He knows that it works. When he gets to tournaments in around the world, let's say he gets to the one that they play in Mexico, where they play in 2.5 kilometers at the height, obviously the carry distance will be different to what he's used to playing when he's playing sea level. So what he does there is he knows what ball speed he hits when he does a certain movement, and then he uses the reverse optimizer to know normally at sea level this ball would have gone 30 yards, or let's say he hits a ball speed of 45 miles an hour. Normally this one would have gone 40 yards for me. I can see while I'm here in Mexico, this one goes 50 yards, and then he can actually type that information into a sheet that his caddy will take. And that way they can always be ahead of the field in regards to knowledge about how it does and how it works. And it's all based on ball speed in regards to wedge data. And that is why he's one of the best wedge players in the world currently. Did that one make sense? Because it's a very important story also to understand how it works. When we take this linear equation into it, you'll see 1 mile an hour in ball speed equals 1.4 yards in carry distance. Approximately, because there will be some influence in regards to with ball type and obviously wind, air, and all that stuff. But at sea level, that is the equation. Do you guys know what the equation is for drivers? Can we have some guests on the chat? What is the equation for drivers? What would 1 mile an hour of ball speed approximately equals in a driver? Is that the same as wedges, 1.4 yards? 3 yards? That's very close. Anybody else? 5? So what it actually equals is 2 yards. The number 2 yards more of a carry on a driver for 1 mile an hour. All else being equal, is something that you need to address. It's always important to sell all else being equal, because you will increase, if you increase ball speed by 1 mile an hour, you will also increase most likely spin rates and launch angle and all that. So all else being equal. So moving on here, if we move into the smash factor that we briefly touched upon earlier, we briefly talked about how players would hit the golf clubs if they would hit the bottom groove or the toe groove or whatever. All of these numbers are influential in regards to smash factor, and smash factor is the energy transfer to the golf ball. So looking at these numbers here, we once again have the ball flights, the low ball flight, mid ball flight, high ball flight, and we have the spin loft number here. These are probably hit with a 60-degree wedge. And then we have the smash factor indications. Do you guys remember that I said that we will always try to achieve a smash factor number or an energy transfer that was just below 1:1? That is what is shown here. So a 1:1 indication, you would see that you will have a lot of the red ones up here in this area. So you can actually decrease this one by mishitting slightly on the club face. So going down to 0.9, you'll see that we start to pop up some of the blue ones, higher ball flights. And obviously the green ones that you want are just around the 1 mark. When you go to, I would say this one is a complete mishit. This one is probably a shank, because you have a higher smash factor than what you would normally have. So these are the mishits, and you will see that the spin lock will just pop off completely, or you can hit it on the top of the club. And you can also do this. High ball flight will also indicate that these guys might be able to hit a flop shot. Flop shots will decrease the spin friction on the club and decrease the amount of energy transfer to the ball, but it will pop up at a very aggressive launch angle and land very steep. So that would be a high shot. So that this one, that one, that one, and that one would most likely be flop shots. Does that make sense? Flop shots, you will also basically be 4 to 5 degrees into the ball, because you don't want to hit the ground before the ball, and you will have opened the club face so dramatically that the spin loft numbers will just pop out of this wall. So that is probably spin loft flop shots. So going back to the friction that we talked about earlier, friction is a number that we don't show. Spin friction numbers, I put on the equation here for you guys to look at. So we have the spin rate, and we divide that by 3 times club speed times the spin loft. Spin friction is the indication of how much of a friction is there presented to the golf ball in this case. So what we have over here is spin friction numbers. So the higher spin friction you get, and compared to the spin. So you see that there is the higher you go, the more spin you go. So if we look at these numbers up here, very high spin numbers, very high spin friction. Down here we have the low spin friction numbers, and we also have the lower spin rates. Spin friction can be, if you guys want to go and do some testing yourself, which is always a good idea and a lot of fun, in my opinion. You guys should go get one of those spray thingies that the hairdressers use, and try to spray some water on the club face, hit a shot. That will reduce the spin friction. You can also hit a shot where you put water on both ball and club. That will further reduce the spin friction. Or you can use the old trick that the links golfers used back in the days, where they used Vaseline on the club face. That will completely remove any spin friction you get, and you will get 0 spin, and you will be able to hit those very low runners that people were using on the links golf courses back in the days when it was windy. So every old Scottish golfer has used used to have Vaseline in his golf bag just to cheat these numbers. So that will give you the lower ball flights on those occasions. So this was a lot of numbers and indications on how it works and what it should do. And this is basically the last slide of numbers that we have. There has been quite a lot of information here, but I believe when we take it to the Trackman system and uses the optimizer, I'm going to show you a few wedge shots, what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you the difference in some of the numbers, basically, and a more of a how to use guide than it is actually how to practice. Do you guys have any feedback on the slides we've been through here? Is there any information that's useful for you? Feel free to unmute and just say whatever you have to say.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of information, new information for me, at least. I don't know if for others. So any questions, and you can always go back to these with slides and stuff. But interesting stuff.
Definitely. And if there's any of you guys that would like to take a deep dive into more of the data-based information behind wedges and all that stuff, you're always free to reach out to us. As mentioned, we have bucket loads of data, and we can pretty much pull whatever information from the system that is relevant. So that is definitely something to look at if you guys are interested. We have actually discussed it, Ilka, to add spin friction to the numbers, but as spin friction is not a number that you can control in a fitting environment or in a teaching environment, we decided not to, because it's not something that you can influence. All other Trackman data numbers are something that you have some way of influencing, but the spin friction numbers is just a number that's there. It's an environmental number. It's either the golf club's number, or it's the weather, or some kind of external factor that is influencing the spin friction. So it's not something that we are planning to add to the I don't know how to explain it, but we have two sides of Trackman. We have one side that has the parameters that you guys are looking at. Then we probably have, I think it's 30 something numbers that you are able to look up, but the Trackman is actually data collecting 92 data points, which means that we have a lot of information that is not put into the user interface yet. And it's always a calculation from us. Does this number add any value to the coach, the player, or anybody? Or is it just a number that is used to calculate another number? And that is that's something that we are very much careful of, not just putting data out there because it is data. We need to have a reason to do it. And obviously spin friction is not a number that you're able to influence. It's obviously you can dry off the ball in the club face, but you should be doing that anyway. So it's not something that's on the agenda to put up. Is that an all right answer? Perhaps a question for the we have two Trackman employees here. Guys, is there anything that I haven't passed through, or anything that you believe that could be important to these slides that I should just address quickly? Just a thumbs up or thumbs down is fine.
Not that I can think of. A lot of good stuff here.
All right. Good stuff then. Let's take another 5 to 10 minutes. I'll just rig up the TPS program, and then we'll go through some live shots. I will hit some golf shots. I'm not a good golfer. I haven't played a round of golf since May, so it might be exciting to hit some golf shots. We're gonna go through my data points and specifically deep dive into the ones that we talked about here. And then I'm gonna show you the features of TPS because we were running it on a laptop because I'm in the studio. We're gonna go through the optimizer, and we're gonna go through hitting some golf shots and basically trying to set up an online education. So if one of you guys are up to the task of being the instructor here, only based on numbers, no video is needed, and then I would hit some shots, put you guys to the test, and you guys can have a look at it, and then we can get back and then together go through some of the numbers and see which one is the important one to change. So that will be in the next segment of this Wedge data system. So unless any of you have any questions, I'll be in the room here, so you can just shout out if you have questions, and then otherwise people can go have some coffee and yeah, stretch your legs if you're sitting down, and then we'll take it from there.
Yep. How 10 minutes if we start 10:55? Or
10:55 is fine, yeah.
Okay, great. So short break, 10:55 continues.
Yeah, will you check that one and finish as well?
Yeah, eli 10:55 jatketaan, pieni tauko ja sitten siirrytään seuraavaan osioon.
Screen. Are you guys seeing the TPS screen here?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the basic setup that we are going to use. I've put on the parameters in the bottom and the ball flight height and low. I don't know if you guys can see the chat window here, but I'm just going to move it to the side. So what I'm basically suggesting that we do here is that I hit a few shots. I show you the features that we can use here in the TPS, because you will have the same features in on the Trackman and the Pro app that you can bring to the short game area. And then I believe we should discuss some of the numbers here. I'm quite afraid that either I'm speaking to you guys at a level that is too low and you guys find this incredibly boring, or that we might be moving a bit too fast ahead of time here, because if there's no questions to it, either you guys are probably the best wedge coaches in the world, or I'm starting at the wrong level here. So I would really like you guys to participate in the interpretation of these numbers, and then we can go into each and individual number, see exactly what it shows and how it works. If we are not in, I wouldn't say discussion, but if we don't talk about these things, we will end up having this workshop in 1.5 hours. So basically, first of all, I am going to hit some wedge shots. I will start to hit some shots, but I will not tell you what I'm trying to do because I have no clue if it actually goes the way I want it to do. I am hitting Pro V1 golf balls. What we need to make sure when doing this is that if you go to settings in the top right corner of TPS, make sure that you choose the right golf ball. I'm going to move the chat here again. We have the normalization menu down here. And when you have the number of golf balls here, I'm going to share the golf ball selection view, so you can select what golf balls you're using. But it's just very important in regards to the optimizer that is reliant on our normalization numbers. So it's important that you choose the right one. As I'm hitting Pro V1 golf balls, I'm going to show premium. I am pretty much at sea level, as the entire Denmark is pretty much at sea level. I'm normalizing to 25 degrees because that is the weather I like to play golf in, basically. So that is important settings to do. I'm just gonna hit a shot. I'm sorry if the noise will go into the speaker. Not the best shot in the world, but at least it will give us some indication on what happened here. So looking at these numbers, we have the numbers that we started speaking about: swing direction, attack angle, club path, and those numbers. That is where we're going to start with this. So we have a negative attack angle on the golf ball. We are going to find the swing plane. Where is that one located? There it is. So 65 degrees swing plane, steeper one, which will equivalent to probably 1, 2.5. So attack angle, we have the swing plane. We need to find the swing direction. Can you guys see my arrow on the screen here? Otherwise, I need to explain where I'm pointing.
Yeah, we can. The arrow is visible. Yeah, so.
Okay, that is very good. Finding it. So the club path here is 1 negative, which means that the swing direction in this instance, I can't find it. There. So the entire swing in this case is 3.2 degrees to the left, right? If the swing direction had been 0 and I've been 4.6 degrees into the ball, I would have expected to have a positive club path. But because I moved the entire swing to the left, as I did here, I'm still able to manage to have a negative club path on the ball at around 0. Does that make sense? If I'm trying to hit a shot with a more, I have to be careful here, but I will try to hit a shot with a positive club path on the ball and see what that influences the swing direction. If I keep it at approximately 4 degrees negative. I hit into the ground there, but it still makes sense. I will look at the swing direction here, which is basically a lot to the right. Almost 0 in attack angle. And because the swing direction is pointing right, the club path dramatically increased on that one. So that is the influence between these 3 numbers. When looking at wedge shots, you would like to have people hitting into the golf ball. Obviously, this one is completely out of the ordinary because I hit into the ground. What you want to do is have people with a slightly negative swing direction. That will allow for the club path, for the club path to be approximately 0 in a negative attack angle. So that is some of the numbers to look at in that case. Should we try to do some cases? I will hit a shot, and you guys can tell me in regards to only swing direction, club path, and attack angle. I'm going to remove all the other. We should have a remove all tile. So now we have the 3 numbers here. I'm going to try to manipulate the data a bit, so it will be exaggerated. And then I would like you guys, somebody to raise your hand, and say, I want to go, to go through the numbers here. I just saw that JP asked if we can go through the ball type with some examples. I have different ball types in front of me, and I will take it up in 15 minutes. The difference between hitting a real golf ball with probably one golf ball and the ones that I have laying here is some pinnacle stuff. Hopefully we'll see a difference. Otherwise it will be a very strange thing. Are you guys up for this task? You can just, if you don't want to speak and you want to keep it on mute, you can just write in the chat here. So I'm going to ask some questions and see if I can get some answers. First shot. I have to move the ball inside. So, could somebody tell me why my club path is neutral in this case when I'm 10 degrees into the ball? 10-degree attack angle is relatively much on a wedge shot, right? I hope you agree. I'm going to change this view up here. Go into impact. And then go into swing plane. Yeah, Carlos, that is right. It will be a steep swing plane, but we are only focusing on the attack angle, club path, and swing direction on this one. Thanks. Looking at the picture on the right side here, you'll see the swing plane at 61, but you will also see that the swing direction, which is indicated, this is a view that all of you guys have. The swing direction is indicated by this line here. And because we are moving, let's say we move the target line straight up here, you see that the average on the yellow one here, that was our swing direction. It's pointing left, the curvature. And because of that, we are able to maintain a relatively neutral club path, even though we're 10 degrees into the ball. I'm going to try to manipulate this slightly. So looking at this next shot here, we have a more normal attack angle, meaning that the club is moving at a negative angle of 5.2 degrees, which is more normal on a wedge shot. But because my swing direction is more neutral, you see that the yellow one is pointing more in the direction of the gray line. I will have a positive club path in this move. So that is the way that you can manipulate the swing direction compared to club path, compared to attack angle. I will see if I can get close to 0 in attack angle, like a more of a sweeping golf shot, and see how that influences the swing direction of the club path. Slight duff. So this was more of a duff shot. Obviously trying to do 0 in attack angle with a wedge is not optimal, but it's good for the example purpose here. So you see that now, well, I'm closing in on the 0 attack angle. My club path and my swing direction are closing to each other. I hope this makes sense, because it is like a basic knowledge on how to educate and how to teach wedge shots, how to get a full understanding of the 3D pictures of the movement of the club face. Obviously, this is also important when going into fitting purposes. All the wedges today comes with different bounds, grinds, and materials. And one of the reasons to choosing between bounds and grinds will be either you use it as a spin optimization work tool that will have the spin loft around 45 degrees, And then you have the other wedge that needs to have a higher bounce, bigger camber, because that one is working on the launch angle and getting you out of issues. So that is the correlation between attack angle, club path, swing direction. I hope you guys can follow, and I hope, I basically hope that you guys are completely knowledgeable about this, and that is the reason why there's no questions, because it is like a baseline tool to use for wedge education and in general. Now we have some very different golf shots here, and I promised to let you know how to toggle these numbers on here. Over here, I can toggle them on and off here. Have them. I have to find them here. Just give me a second. It's moved into the numbers category here. Let's see. Press here, and in the bottom here you have average and consistency numbers. So I can toggle them on and off depending on what you want to show. Now these numbers are slightly skewed because I tried to hit different shots, but it still gives you an indication on the average for the player. If a player is attempting to hit 10 shots, 10 identical shots, you give them a task and say, I want to see 10 wedge shots to 40 meters. They will most likely try to do the same movement all over and over again. And you will be able to see from the average number if is the movement the player is trying to do correct, or do I need to change that? And then you have the standard deviation number over here, is how good is the player actually at doing this that he's trying to do. So the standard deviation number is a skill indication, and the average number is a number of intent. So what is he trying to do? And the differential number is there. It's shown in a way that we are showing the deviation number. So ±3 means that the club path here has been switching from approximately +4 to -3. So 3 on both sides, or -4 to +2 actually. And then we take away what's called outliers. So it's only a representation of 70% of the shots. So there will be some outliers that will be taken out, which can be bad movement or bad readings or whatever. So the standard deviation number is very important for you guys, especially in short game, around the greens, and also in regards to putting as well, which is a completely different story. Are you guys completely comfortable in these 3 numbers? And we can move on. Please write in the text or unmute and say, go, 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 because it's baseline numbers that we need to be sure that everybody knows. A thumbs up is sufficient. Then we'll move on.
One question, Nicholas, about the average and the standard deviation. So they're both 70% of the shots, or?
No, the average is the average. It's only
Yeah,
the
okay,
standard
yeah.
deviation number. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Perfect. I hope you're all with me on this one. I will add some more numbers now, because now we will move into a more of a drill-based example. Move the ones that we have here. Move to club speed. We're gonna move towards length of golf shots, right? So now we are moving into club speed was an influential factor in length of the shot. We agree? Perfect. Ball speed was also an influential factor. The smash factor was something that we talked about. Now we're not going to go into spin and launch and all that stuff yet. Now it's only a matter of improving the correlation between club path and ball speed. So this is the this is basically the DJ setup, right? So we're going to give them another tag here, call it DJ setup. And I'm gonna hit 3 or 4 shots now that you'll see we'll have a different color indication, and then we're gonna go through some of the numbers and see how it correlates, right? That should be very different smash factors on the 3 shots here. So I'm obviously not that good of a golfer, and it's very hard for me to hit 3 identical shots in club speed, but I try to. I am about 1 mile an hour in club speed in the standard deviation on these. But what I wanted to show here is the carry distance difference in club speed. We have the 3 shots here, and you will see that the difference in carry on the 3 shots, it's 46 meters of carry. The next one is 61. And the last one that actually has the less club speed is actually the furthest one that goes into the field here. The reason for this is the smash factor number. Remember that we talked about good golf shots being in that kind of area there, where you have the smash factor just below 1. That is an impact where you will actually hit the golf club. Let's see if we have impact location on. That is relatively close to center. I tried to have one. This one is slightly lower. And this one wasn't massive, sorry. So what we're going to do here is have a chat about the numbers that we see. The first one is what I would estimate as being a good shot. You see that there's a good correlation between club speed and ball speed and smash factor. If you can manage to have that kind of impact on the golf club, run smash factor around 1, you can use the length of your backswing to actually control the ball speed, and you can actually choose whatever feel and whatever model the player would like to use to hit the shots here. And that will make it easier to control the carry length. Then I tried to do one that was lower in the smash factor. What I tried to do here is hit a golf shot that will produce more of a spin on it. I didn't actually manage to do it because I didn't hit the correct spin loft. But the idea of having a lower smash factor on the face with a slight off-center hit produces more friction to the golf ball. And then this one was attempted to hit lowest on the grooves. For taking the example here of Henrik, he asked in the beginning of the session here, is if it's good to hit the lowest part of the grooves. I don't think so. I think that we should maintain the percentage of shots hit up on the center of the surface, or at least towards the toe of the club. When we have these lower hit shots on the club face, it will produce a higher smash factor because the center of gravity on the golf iron is lower in the face. You'll see that the concentration of weight will be most in this area, which means that the golf ball will have more weight behind it and increased energy transfer. Does that make sense? I hope so. But what it also does, if you hit a golf ball in the bottom of the club head, it will have a tendency to slightly overthrow the top of the golf club, producing a lesser dynamic loft, which will often lead to being spin loft being off. You see that the spin loft is way lower than this one, 38.2, 49, which means that it was slightly over what it's supposed to be. And then we have 38. So the closer we get to the 45 mark, the higher spin rate we have because of spin friction, right? So should we try to hit 3 more shots with the same club speed and see if it produces something else? Or are we completely in line with the story that the ball speed determines the length and not the club speed? Beautiful.
Yeah, I think silence is, well, we have to turn no questions, so let's go on.
All right. We might finish early today then, if there's no questions. That is just perfect. So what we are going to do now is having a look at the features that we have developed for this, because all of the information that we have today is obviously something that you guys need to know, but it's not something that you need to speak to all your clients and people about. It's base knowledge, but it's not something that you need to learn about. So what we have here is that we have an optimizer in the bottom of the screen. If I press the optimizer, it will come out with the information needed. If I go in the top left corner of the optimizing menu here, I can see there's an opportunity to show low trajectory, mid trajectory, high trajectory, depending on what the player would like to do. In this case, I would like to have a mid trajectory. Am I hitting? I think that my computer just froze here. Pitch shots at mid trajectory. There you go. So what I can see from this is that my pitch. What I can see here is that my pitch shot, in this case, if I wanted to go for an optimal ball flight for perfect conditions, means A1 precision, I should have increased my, flattened out my attack angle on this one. It should have been between 2 and 4 degrees negative. That would have increased my spin loft to this area here, between 48 and 50. My ball speed would have decreased, so I was slightly overpowering this shot. My launch angle should be up as well. I think this one was the one that I hit in the bottom of the club face, wasn't it? There's better. And here you see that the launch angle should have been higher. You can see that I should have had it up here. My spin rate was pretty good, but the total apex height of the ball flight was too low. So I need to improve on this. To be honest, I'm more likely to be in this category here. So let me try to hit a shot here, see if I can improve on my base. As you see, I am not the best golfer in the world, but it does make a good case in regards to telling about the different numbers here. So I actually managed to get my attack angle within the corridor that I needed to. My spin loft is still pretty good, and you see that I produce 8,571 in spin. So my spin friction, and my attack angle is pretty good. My ball speed is too low on this one. I might have hit it off center too much, and my launch angle is definitely too low, which means that my height is too low. So you will always have this kind of information available to you. You can do it, the optimizer on both the TM Pro app, and you can use it in this area here. It's just important to speak with your students, ask them, what are we trying to achieve here? Are we trying to achieve better ball flight with wedges that are easier to replicate? Or are we trying to improve your length? Are we trying to improve on a specific number, or what are we trying to do? I always recommend that you try to improve the player's game, and by that using the numbers instead of improving on a single number. But that is definitely up to players. That is very player dependent what they like to do. But messing around with these high trajectory, low trajectory stuff, I would always go for mid to low trajectory from fairway and A1 position, meaning the A1 wedge, and then going to a high trajectory fitting purpose for the F wedge, where you actually are in a position that is not optimal for you. So that is basically how the optimizer works. And I hope it makes sense. I hope it's a feature that you will use also on wedges. You know, probably all of you know that it works on drivers as well, that you can do a full fitting basically by changing loft, line, shaft, and whatever compared to what the optimizer says. So this is obviously from good conditions. The optimizer is always optimizing for the perfect ball flight from no friction shots. If you start to add water to the equation, you will move more into the kind of area where you need to work on landing angle. And landing angle is not incorporated into this one. This is spin and optimal ball flight.
Nicholas, there's one question from Jussi in the chat about strike location. I don't know if Jussi want to open your mic and be more specific, or.
Yeah. Hi, Nicholas. Yeah, just a general question regarding how much you look at strike location on these. Obviously, there is a difference in the shot characteristics then based on location. So just wondering how much attention you pay attention to that with players.
I obviously do, but it's more of a question of what we're trying to do. As mentioned, the optimal location, strike location, is dependent on what the player wants to do. If you have a player that is trying to create the most spin possible, I would try to aim for basically the position that I have on the wedge there. You see on the right, which is slightly above and slightly towards the toe of the center of the club. What you would see is that people tend to be better at strike locations or impact location in their wedge game than they are in all the other parts of the game. And that is simply due to the shaft being shorter and the lie angle being steeper. It just makes it easier to hit the same spot every single time. That's also why people feel it's easier to hit a wedge shot than it is to hit different. The strike location will have the main influence on smash factor that will ultimately influence ball speed. So it's something to keep an eye on, but it's not something that I would use my main focus on. But obviously, depending on what you work on.
Great, thanks.
One question from me, considering that we're moving indoors for a while in the last upcoming months. So with the spin rates, how reliable are they, or what to take in consideration to like with the markers on the ball and stuff like that to get a reliable spin rate and the other numbers in the optimizer as well? So
when it comes to spin numbers, we are using a standard spin friction calculation when you get numbers in cursive. I think it's called italic. Have you guys seen a difference between numbers as they look now on my screen and when you sometimes have spin numbers that are slightly skewed? I think the time is called italic. When you have numbers that looks like the other one, that is a full measured spin number. You have the full measurement, it's absolutely perfect. And I'm hitting indoors here with, I have 3 meters of ball flight and I have the OERT lighting and everything on. So I have the perfect conditions. I'm not using metal dots in the shots I'm hitting here, but I'm still getting the full spin numbers. So I don't see a big issue with it. But if you are getting italic numbers where you don't really trust the actual number, I would put on a small metal dot, have the metal dot be in the exact place where the golf club hits the golf ball. So you're hitting into the metal dot. That will increase the spin parameters, so we can actually see more of the spin on the golf ball. You remember the first slide I showed on the blue spectrogram, where we could see the small spin slides? I hope you remember that one.
Yeah,
Not,
yeah.
And that just increases the signal that we get. We are down to being able to estimate spin on only one rotation. So if the ball only rotates once before hitting the screen, we will get spin numbers. But when it comes to, for instance, long drivers that hits the ball with 200 miles an hour, and there's only 3 meters to the screen, you will most likely miss some of the spin numbers, and we will need to add that dot on it. There's also a specific product coming out to indoor golf from one of the ball manufacturers, where the metal dots is actually embedded into the golf ball, like an indoor golf ball, to say. Obviously, the golf ball will work just as good outdoors, but it's primarily made for indoor use, and that will be brought to market later this year. So that is also a way to get around it. The spin calculations that we have when the number is in italic is very, very close to being the right number. The only thing that we can't take into considerations is there dirt on the club face? What other spin friction deviations can there be on the specific shots? As long as we know where it's hit on the club face, we know the spin loft on it, we know the club speed, we know the ball speed, we are very, very good at estimating the spin numbers. You would see probably 300 RPMs in difference between measured spin and calculated spin on the maximum.
Great, thanks.
Does any of you guys have the opportunity to bring your Trackman 4 to the practice area and try out different scenarios, like rough shot, semi-rough, fairway, mats, all the different shots? I think that was probably a no.
But no, if anybody try different scenarios.
If you have the opportunity to do so, I would recommend that you do it before winter time. Just go hit shots in different scenarios, see what is the difference. Get to learn the numbers in more depth yourself. See how does long grass, for instance, how would that influence face angle and the face angle rotation in regards to a swing plane and a dynamic lie of these numbers. And that way you get a full understanding about how it works, how can we improve the wedge game for these players. Because as I started saying, there's not a template way of doing it. So the more knowledge that you guys can gain yourself and get under your skin, the more easy it will be for you guys to actually do this wedge education. Just a quick question: how much time are spent on wedge game? If you take 100 lessons, how many of these lessons are actually given on wedge game? Just an estimation. It don't need to be an exact number.
Yeah, just write in the chat
just write in the chat, because it's very different from areas. If we go to Denmark, for instance, it's only about 10% of all lessons given that are given with wedges. And to make it even more scary, they spend around 50% of their time educating drivers. And putting is almost non-existent. Nobody's educating people on how to putt, which doesn't make sense in the comparison on how many shots people are actually using in the golf course.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, I don't know, of course, it depends a little bit on the level of players here and that we're coaching, but with the average golfer, I think we're pretty much close to those numbers that you mentioned in Denmark. So I think most are kind of, they want lessons more on the long game, less on the wedges. And you can also see with the wedge setup that they have the kind of the wedge from the iron set and stuff like that. So it's part of the game that I think many players would benefit a lot, but maybe as coaches we should also kind of market it more, that this is important stuff that you can really benefit from it. So
the two easiest way of moving a player in his golfer's life cycle, we work very much with the concept of a golfer's life cycle. And this might be some insight on how we think at Trackman. But a golfer's life cycle is, you come into a golf club, you never touched a golf ball before, you never seen anything about golf, and you need the introduction to the golf. Here in the introduction center, it's very important to have people try to hit the long shots and have it more of an entertainment-based way of doing things, playing games, having fun, moving around. But to maintain these people in the golf as golf players, we need to move them under the handicap of 22 within the first 2 years. If people are not under the handicap of 32 within the first 2 years, there is a 70% higher chance that they will stop playing golf. And these are numbers that are pulled from the federations all over Europe, put together in one file that we've obviously been informed about. So getting them into the handicap 32, which it's important, but it's something that can be doable. Getting people to 32 in handicap is definitely doable. So from there, to get them to move further into the golfer's life, getting more involved and constantly opening new sides of the game for these people is also what maintains people in the sport. And the easiest way to get people to lower their handicaps is to focus on the areas where they actually lose their shots. They will lose a drive eventually, right, left. They will use iron shots that goes into the lake and all that stuff, but that is just part of golf. If people get an understanding on the scoring side of the clubs, which means putters and wedges, it's the easiest way in the world to move players further along the life cycle of golfing. The more people you get to the mid-handicap segment, the more people will take lessons. The more people who take lessons, the more money you guys make. So this is really a money maker for you guys. If you can get more people focused on the scoring clubs. Some of the ideas that have been implemented around the world is that people have done wedge weeks, where the lessons that they give are focused around the short game area. They put up a small tent and say wedge week, and people come in, because when people are starting to open their minds about what is the opportunities of scoring in these wedge games, people would just continue to ask for education in that sense. It is a scoring club, and it is somewhere where you can actually change the scorecard where you are. And the same goes for putting. People spend a lot more time on the putting green during a golf round than they do when practicing, which is an unfortunate setup, but that's just the way it is. So that is also a way to gain more momentum in regards to lessons given, is get people on the putting green as well. That is obviously just my 2 cents into that discussion, but it's a completely new market, and I truly believe that your members and clients would appreciate the opportunity to be educated more on this side of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Jussi is listening. We discussed the other day about kind of like Jussi is the national team coach for girls and ladies that maybe focus the wintertime indoor practice in shots under 70 meters or so. You want to open it up more? Jussi, what are your thoughts on that, and maybe how to kind of in indoors develop this side of the game, what you've seen in tournaments? And I don't know if Jussi is there, but
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was just on the phone.
yeah, like we discussed the other day when we met, that about kind of like you mentioned that the national team players and juniors and players on that level should focus their practice more on under 70 meters during the indoor season and stuff, like what you've noticed in tournaments and during the national team camps and so.
Yeah, I mean, I think from this is purely my observation, is that, you know, where we lose a lot of shots, a lot of ground is particularly in wedge and short games. So, I mean, I would certainly be a fan of our players spending a lot of their as much time as possible just becoming really good, really skilled wedge players and short game players. Yeah, definitely. And even, you know, again, the putting feature I think is really good as well. I've used that with a few times with players. So, you know, even using that as a kind of a baseline tool to develop your putting skills.
Yeah, we're working with a lot of guys on developing the putting side of business. Kenyon is one of the guys that we work with. We also work with a guy in Denmark called Kenneth Hansen. He's very much into the putting side of things and work with a lot of tour players, and he's basically been the putting instructor for both the Hygaard twins and obviously the Danish lady golfers who were just taking part in the Solheim Cup. They've been very interested in getting more information on short game. Why are we doing this? Because as mentioned in the beginning of this, a lot of it is based on feel, and feel is obviously good to have. But if you don't know what to feel, then you're pretty stuck in not gaining the momentum and the results that you want. So I believe it's a good idea to take this information. Just keep in mind that indoor practice from mats will not give the exact same results as you would see outdoors. You will produce higher spin numbers from mats due to the fact that you don't have any spin friction issues when hitting off mats. So if people are getting used to spinning their wedges 10,000 and then they get to the grass side in the spring and they only get the number 8,000, that is going to pose an issue. So as long as you keep focus on the right numbers as spin loft, ball speed, club speed, and those numbers, as we just addressed, then obviously it will take them to a good place. Also the correlation between swing direction, club path, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Good stuff. We are far before schedule here. So I don't actually have that much on the agenda unless we can just do like in Q&A on Trackman in general. And I will be happy to answer whatever questions you have if I'm able to, and if I'm not, I will address them to headquarters and get back to you on email. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, I think Jenny raised her hand. She has a question. So Jenny,
Yeah.
open up your mic and go ahead.
Well, I hope, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about the impact height, because now it looks like the cross is on the 5th groove. Is that where it's the kind of like the ideal, or
We've
the average, or?
Yeah, the golf club you're looking at here is a golf club that is thought up in the minds of our computer engineers. It doesn't exist in real world. What you have up here in the top right corner is like you have an edit club selection. So when you press that one, you can actually decide where
Oh,
it's
okay.
supposed to be. And you can go here. We've decided that the picture will show the fifth groove.
Okay.
It's an average over golf clubs. But you can actually move the orange dot here. See that?
Yeah. Okay.
So I can move it back and forth, and I can put in what is the static line of the golf club and what is the static loft of the golf club. And that will just improve the strike location data that you get.
All
You
right.
can do that on all drivers, irons, and whatever you do. And when you save it, let's say I would do like, put it there, do like that, and then save as new club. I can call it SMA test, and then okay. Now I will have in the club selection menu that I can't enter because we have the just gonna quit this one. So when I'm going in here, starting the new session up, in the wedge selection here, I will have the opportunity to choose the wedge that I just did, and this information will be saved into the system. So when you guys have fitting centers with multiple 7-irons, different lies, loft, and whatever, have one of your assistants or elite players hit a shot, address the orange spot to the center, adjust lie and loft, save the club, and then you will have it in a drop-down menu here, which is a cool feature for having, because it will increase the amount of data in regards to impact location. The numbers that you get, I'm just going to hit one shot here. Just give me a second. So you see the movement of the orange dot here is because I messed up the data, but the number you get, impact height and impact offset, will always be correct. It's just a representation of the orange dot. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Good question.
Yeah, and then there's the question in the chat about the different ball settings that was also earlier. So if you can go through them more.
I'm gonna send you guys in the sheet here. We have like a testing protocol on how to do it. So what you basically do is you choose when you're hitting golf balls. First of all, you will hit some 6-irons, right? And then you're going to compare it to ball speed numbers, if it's comparable to the ball speed that you would see on a Pro V1 golf ball. Then afterwards, if it's a lower one, you are going to hit some wedges and see the spin. So if the ball speed produced on a 6-iron is lower, then you go to the spin rate numbers, checking spin rate. And if the spin rate is higher on the range ball than it was on the Pro V1, it's a limited distance hard ball. If the spin rate is lower, it's a limited distance soft. And we have a full scale. I can put it in. I can't show you here because I don't have. Wait a minute. Might be able to show you. Just give me a second. I think I might actually have it in. Just give me a second. I'm trying to send it from a telephone to myself so I can show you here. It might pop up later, but it gives you a very good indication on which golf ball to choose on different shots. And you will also see that there will be a difference between choosing the different wedge shots. So basically you do a ball speed test first, find the spin, ball speed that correlates to it, then the spin rate test, and then you can choose whatever wedges you choose. It's relatively easy. I'm going to do an example now where we take probably one golf ball, hit a shot, look at the spin numbers, and then we're going to try to emulate the same shot with hard or different kind of golf ball. Yeah. JP, what to choose on Trackman if playing probably 1X and standard 90 compression range ball? It really depends on the 90 compression range ball. 90 compression range ball would normally be limited distance hard. And the Pro V1 and Pro V1X is what we normalized back to. So that will give you a pretty close number to what the real deal is. I'm gonna try to hit a few probably once, and then going back to hitting the pinnacle balls I spoke about earlier. Try to emulate approximately the same shots. Did you get a spin up? Yeah. I'm gonna change to a different ball type. See if that influences the spin numbers at all. Did we see a difference? Just remove some of these. So average spin numbers on these are approximately 5,000, and the spin numbers on the Pro V1s are an average 6,200. So there is a big difference in spin numbers depending on which golf balls you use, and that is a good story. These are both on-course golf balls, so it's something that you need to address as well. If people want to have good wedge game, good short game, good spin control and distance, they would need to choose to play a proper golf ball. You can't be playing the cheapest golf ball in the market and expect good results. And the golf ball is the most important factor in all of this. Even though we've talked a lot about club data and all that stuff, if the golf ball you're hitting is not good enough, then you will not get the results that you're expecting. I hope that makes sense. I will obviously share the slides with you where you can actually see in comparison to range balls. It's a pretty good standard way of doing it, and it will bring you results that will be as close to what you would expect a real golf ball to be. Did that answer the questions?
I hope so. I don't know if any more questions relating the golf ball, JP or Ben or anyone else?
I obviously can't go into specifics in regards to different equipment manufacturers' golf balls, but I guess you guys get a pretty good sense of what manufacturer to go through when it's in regards to golf balls. It's always a good story to tell when you're educating people that the golf ball is the most important part of golf. You can hit the best golf shot in the world, but if the golf ball is just slightly off, you will have issues with the ball flight. So always focus on the golf ball. If you're able to bring your golf balls, go to your equipment manufacturer of choice and make sure that you get like a practice bag of practice balls, and then use those for the short game test. I'm not sure if you need to buy them or if they are provided for you, but it's definitely a good thing to do. And having people practice with Pro V1s or Pro V1X is not a good idea if they're not playing them on the course. They need to be able to interpret the numbers that they see, compare them to what they have on the course. So always try to mimic the golf ball that they're playing on the course. Obviously, everybody should be playing the premium tour balls because those are simply the best golf balls on the market. But if they're not, try to have them bring their own golf balls to the teaching. If they play a medium range golf ball, bring it, set up the Trackman to that exact golf ball and start to play on those terms. Premium hard golf balls would be if you hit a 6-iron and you see the exact same ball speed on the golf ball you're hitting and compared to the Pro V1, and then you look at the spin rate. If it has a higher spin rate number on that one, you would go to a wedge test, and then you would hit wedges. And if it produces a higher spin number than the playing golf ball, the Pro V1, Pro V1X, that will bring you to the premium hard setting. Does that make sense? Great. We won't use, we get a lot of questions. Is premium hard? Is that the Pro V1X, for instance? And it's not. It's not. The Pro V1X is still in the premium category. But there are so many different golf balls out there. There's so many different markets, and there's such bad golf balls as well. So we need to keep that in mind. We also get the questions a lot. Why don't we just put in the equipment manufacturer's products in there and then just call it Pro V1, Pro V1X, call it a Chrome Soft X, and all that stuff? And basically, the reason why we don't do that is because the build quality on certain equipment manufacturers' golf balls are not up to standard. So we can't rely our data on them producing the same golf ball every single time. This way, when we have these conversion numbers, we are not reliant on those exact numbers and what they do. We are not allowed to, we can do pretty much the calculations that we want without taking their businesses into consideration when doing so. I hope it makes sense. Any further questions in regard to wedge games and whatever we have here? Anything you need me to address or speak about or just basically touch upon? The forum is open.
Very quiet, so let's see if any questions pop up. Now's the time. We won't be waiting for 1 hour and see if anybody has questions. So
no, exactly. If you're not comfortable placing your questions here, can you unmute, Ben, and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, that might be a small echo. I've seen different spin values on different finishes on especially wedges, the chromed, the black finish and everything, especially in difficulty, showing spin numbers indoors. Have you met the same issue, or am I alone in this?
Not. We've seen in regards to coding on wedges. Let's take Vokey wedges for an example. All Vokey wedges that are brought to market has been heated on the hitting surface to make it harder and more resistant, so people don't need to change their wedges every other week. And on top of that, there's a coating put on. You can choose a jet black or chrome or whatever the coatings are called, which is primarily design features for glares and lightnings and all that stuff. All of these wedges with the coatings and all that stuff works really, really good and should work the same way. Then we have the raw wedges, and a raw wedge is basically built without any coating, and it's built without any heating on the face of the club, which means that the club will tear down quicker and be worn out on the surface. But that doesn't matter to the tour players because they can change them every week if they want to. So the reason for having a raw wedge is that you can easily grind the back off and do modification to it without any issues. And the other thing is that because it's not heat treated, the energy transfer to the golf ball will be at a lower energy transfer, which will make the spin friction higher and theoretically be able to produce more spin on the golf shot. So I think that might be what you've seen without putting words into your mouth, obviously, but could it be a difference between a raw wedge and a coated heat-treated wedge? Could that be the...
That's very possible. And from there, you actually open the door for a second question regarding equipment and wedges. You said that uncoated ones actually wear out quicker, and Vokey wedges have a coating that allows them to be used over a longer time.
It's not a coating, it's a heat treatment of the face. They actually heat it to an extremely high, and that makes the steel harder.
So there's another question that comes to mind, especially when coaching players or be it elite players or club players. Elite players have the option to basically put a new wedge in every week, every day if they want to. How does numbers change for club players, especially those who basically haven't changed their wedges in 4, 5, 6 years, and then they want to come in and have a low spinny zippy wedge basically from 40 to 50 meters? So how do you see the equipment basically being used year in and year out? Is it even possible with older ones?
It's more of a question related that should be placed to the equipment manufacturers. I can see what I see personally and what I have been experiencing on tour. And going back to the setup that we were talking about with a wedge and a fucked up wedge, the wedge that you use for spin control, that has a certain amount of shots in it. And when the face gets worn out, you will see just like the same if you put water on it, you will see the spin numbers decreasing even though you keep producing the same spin loft and club path and all that. You simply just see a decrease in spin rate produced on that simply because the spin friction is lowering. So using an old wedge is always a bad idea. But what I've seen from practice environments and people playing old wedges is that they don't see the shift. But when playing a wedge and you've been playing it for 2 or 3 years, people often play them more than 2 or 3 years. You will see, because the spin friction is decreasing, the launch angle on the ball increases and the landing angle increases as well. So they might actually get similar results as they used to, but it's a long, prolonged actually way of changing from using spin as the controlling factor on length and spin control to using landing angle. And it's something that people don't notice. I've had elite players playing the same wedge for 3 or 4 years. And when you ask them, why are you hitting your shots like that? He says, well, this works best for me, but that's not been the case when the wedge was new. Does that make sense? So you kind of twist over in using landing angle instead of using a spin on it. So I would say I would say you should change your wedges every other year, but I know that people don't do it, but I do at least, and I don't play a lot of golf. I just don't want to play bad equipment. But the equipment manufacturers can give you more specific details on it. So if you contact your local sales rep, he will take you through exactly, because they will have the numbers on how many shots do they estimate their wedges can last, how many rounds do you play a year, and all that stuff. They have all the information on that side of things.
Yeah, and that might, like you recommended, Nicholas, that testing different kind of conditions, maybe that's a good way to test that. You hit some with the brand new wedge and with the similar one that has been used for 2 years and see what the differences are. So maybe that.
Completely agree. Yeah, but it's more for the equipment manufacturers to go through. But I would say if an average golfer doesn't change his wedges every other year, he will have trouble maintaining the spin numbers as he should on a brand new wedge. Most of the tour players change their wedges after 3 weeks. Some of them keep their gap wedge and they keep their F wedge because it doesn't really matter that those two are separate, but the A1 wedge is changed every other week. If it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. It does make sense.
One question in the chat.
Yeah, you would actually be able to do so. Yeah, it's you will see the spin friction number is a number that will decrease the more use there is on the wedge. But what you can't see from spin friction is whether it's the wedge condition or if it's weather determined, or if it's grass cuts off, or if it's somebody who's put Vaseline on the side of the golf ball. You won't be able to determine what exactly is causing this spin friction loss, but there is something in the equation, and that is once again why we don't put spin friction number out, because there's so many moving parts in that equation, so it won't really be useful for anything. But in theory, you would actually do it. This is good stuff, guys. This is good questions. Is anybody else focused on anything that we haven't addressed, or anything you would like our opinion on? Otherwise, feel free to reach out to us. If you do not have my email, I will send it in the slides that you will get afterwards. And you can always shoot me an email. I'm normally able to respond within 48 hours of an email. I'm constantly doing things like these workshop meetings and all that stuff, so I'm not good at answering the phone, but you can reach me via text message. So that is that's basically it, guys. We are 1 hour early of time, which is good. Could we have you happened to see anything about high toe wedge? Yeah, we have. The high toe wedge is a good way of increasing spin friction and spin numbers on flop shots, for instance. Because if you are able to hit towards the toe and produce a very low smash factor number, that will increase the spin friction, and that means that you can actually basically hit a flop shot with spin, which is not possible with a normal wedge. So it just opens up a completely new way of hitting golf shots. The golf shot is a very difficult shot to hit, and it's not for everybody. So seeing Phil Mickelson do it, it makes it look very, very easy. But having a regular golfer trying to hit these flop shots from the toe of the club is very hard to do. But we have seen it, and it's also, I don't know how to explain that one, but if you are stuck in the rough and you're stuck in a pretty bad position where you will hit the ball higher on the club face, you might be able to catch a groove or two more, which will increase spin friction, which will increase the number of spin that you can actually hit out of rough scenarios. It's not something that is easily calculated or have specific numbers on, but that is the basic idea. So the idea is good. It's a gimmick, and it's something that the equipment manufacturers have brought to market to sell more wedges. And the use case for them is there. There is people using that kind of the wedge, but it's more of a look and feel kind of thing. Bounce shapes and amount. Bounce is the measured difference between the leading edge and the back tail of the golf club. When it comes to shapes, it's more of grinds and obviously the camber of the shot. There is different philosophies when it comes to bounce, shapes, and all that stuff. Again, when coming to the scoring club, where we're working at the 45 degrees angle on wedges in the spin loft angles and in producing the maximum amount of spin friction, I would always recommend going with a full sole. No grinds, nothing, just a full sole. The bounce should be dependent on the attack angle and low point of the player. If the player has a low point very close to the actual ball, let's say 2 or 3 centimeters after the ball, I would go with something in the vicinity of 6 to 8 on the scoring club there. If we move the low point further away from the actual impact location on the ball, which means that he digs a bit more into the ground, I would go with a higher bounce on that one, but still a full sole. When you come into the area around the green, from rough area, bunker area, and all that stuff, I have a tendency to see people having a bigger camber on the sole of the club that will help them out in those situations. A bigger camber is not necessarily a bigger bounce. That is 2 different kinds of measurements on the golf club, but a bigger camber will help the ball, help the club glide through bunkers, rough, whatever you have, and it's not really that dependent on attack angle when you have the F wedge. So that is just my opinion. Obviously, test it out. You will have people who are perhaps having a worse low point control, are not able to do the same swing every single time. Those guys might benefit from a lower bounce wedge, where you more have a sweeping sensation when you hit the ball. So it's a matter of improving. It will be very player dependent, but I definitely see a tendency to move towards bigger soles and higher and bigger cambers on the soles for the F wedge. Full soles, 8 to 10 degrees of bounce on the scoring clubs. But once again, that is also something that needs to be addressed with the equipment manufacturers. They all have their own special designers and ideas, and I know that Roger Cleveland from Callaway doesn't share the same thoughts as Mr. Woki does from Acushnet. So it's also a matter of religion. And we, by the way, work with all of them. So it's we have a good amount of knowledge when it comes to these kind of things, and we test every single thing before it's brought to market. It's sent by Trackman headquarters for rigorous testing before everything comes to the stores. Anything else? Or did it answer the question there, Ilka? Good stuff. Just unmute and ask the questions if you like to.
Okay. So last questions, anybody in the chat or open your microphone? There's been a good amount of information, a lot of, especially for me, a lot of new stuff and lots of stuff to go through and think about and how to take it in own teaching and test and so on. So thank you very much. It's been really good.
That is very good. That's very good. Remember, guys, you'll get all my contact information if you don't already have it. I know obviously a lot of the names I recognize and you have my information, but all of you who doesn't have my direct information, you'll get it in the email that will be sent out to you. And then we can take it from there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. That's why we're here, and that is part of having a Trackman, is knowledge sharing. And hopefully I am coming to visit you guys at some point when these COVID times are ending and everybody's free to travel without restrictions. I will come to Finland, and hopefully we can do like a summer seminar where we can look at each other and go through putting, driving, new features, whatever you guys like to. It will be up to the PGA to arrange, but I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, please send kind of, if you have some kind of wishes that what we would go through during the live session or these webinars as well. So just anything you need, please let us know. So
would you guys be interested in going through our putting? That is something that is very important to me because I like it, and I was the co-developer on that side of things, and it's just incredible what we can actually do. But that would be a good for a live session where we can actually go to a putting green. It could be an artificial one inside. I know that you guys are building new indoor centers and the indoor facilities, and we can actually do it there. But that could be something. It's a new trend that we're seeing in the golf industry worldwide, that people are very much focused on putting, not just club parameters as we've been working on for the last 100 years, but also on why does the ball actually move the way that it does on the ground. The ball flight laws as we know it are not in influence when we're on the putting green. So that's something that I'll be happy to do. It's a lot of new information and we need a lot of coffee, but it's going to be a good day, and I would like to do it face to face with you guys because that is the best way to do it. So we can just set it up. I can see that there's some people here who are interested in listening.
yeah. Good.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and speak to you later.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicholas, and I'll be in touch, and we'll try to set up that putting day and live session. So
definitely sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, guys. Speak to you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.